Ariel dealing with the project inhabiting process.
Hi, thank you everyone for hanging in there. I know it's been a long day. Let's get started. In the book, Imagine Communities, Benedict Anderson states that, in its modern conception, state sovereignty is fully, flatly, and evenly operative over each square centimeter of a legally demarcated territory. This means that when we buy into the idea of a nation-state, we buy into the idea of border as line. Nowhere is this truer than the U.S.-Mexico border. But the border is not a line. The border is thickened by modes that secure it as a boundary, such as these layers of border fence between San Diego and Tijuana, and the border patrol roads that reinforce them. Moreover, it is thickened by environmental, economic, and human processes that defy the political line. The runoff path from this one small community in Tijuana into San Diego is just one example. By insisting on the border as line, we fail to address problems that exist bilaterally, even when the solutions are not so far-fetched. Because those things that cross the border are processes and not spaces, it is easy to hold them at a conceptual distance and ignore the contradictions of border as line. I propose that to confront these contradictions, we must engage and occupy the processes that disregard the border. This is not a project about two countries coming together to share a territory across the border. We're not there yet. This is a project to open the eyes of an American audience so that they might confront their own construct of border as line. This issue could be addressed at many places along the U.S.-Mexico border, or for that matter, in the world. But because of a particularly interesting set of conditions that I'll share in a moment, and because of my familiarity with the region, I focused on a site at the westernmost portion of the border, where San Diego and Tijuana meet. Here, a string of canyons runs perpendicular to the border on the Tijuana side. They drain north into an estuary in San Diego. The estuary you can see here in the triangular shape at top. The canyon that is of most interest to us is the Los Laureles Canyon, which is demarcated as a watershed on the bottom. To give you a sense of scale, here's our downtown. Intense development in Los Laureles Canyon has increased the natural erosion out of the canyon and into the estuary. Here you can see the overlap and intersection of the canyon, of dirt roads and seasonal stream beds in the heaviest line. This is in the canyon. During storm seasons, roads wash out, leaving huge gullies in the road. This rill here is during the dry season in the summer, and is caused simply by household runoff, so you can imagine the gravity of what happens during a storm. The sediment from these roads and from the vegetation-stripped areas around them flow into the estuary, whose delicate ecosystem is choked by it. Now, programs have been started in Los Laureles to address the problem by filling streets with permeable pavers like these and replanting the canyon slopes with native vegetation. But because of the unilateral thinking wrought by the border as line mentality, money doesn't go to these projects. Money goes here. This is a 60,000 cubic yard sediment basin at the mouth of the canyon in San Diego. The basin keeps sediment out of the estuary so long as it's cleared out every year at a cost of $1.4 million. But it does nothing to solve the source of the problem. Here's the basin from above, and here it is compared to our own Vancouver Art Gallery. Each year, the basin is filled up to 10 feet with sediment from the canyon. The excess flows into the estuary. The sediment dries out, and the basin is left full until early autumn, when it is excavated. When midwinter storms arrive, the basin fills again. The basin is a trans-border process spatialized, ideal for the kind of intervention I've laid out. The architecture here acts as an intermediary between the visitor and the process, helping the visitor to grasp the dramatic changes wrought by this cycle. This understanding comes not from observing the natural phenomena, but from a new set of programs and events choreographed to dance in step with the cyclical process of the basin, and to use the change in ground plane to alter the experience of the site. The site can be accessed from Monument Road, here, which connects easily to the I-5, a major highway in California. Still, it is relatively isolated. In autumn, when the basin is empty, visitors come for evening concerts, parking just north of the site. They walk down into the dugout courtyard and pre-event space beneath the seating, and then ascend through hatches in the seating for the show. After, they filter the field of figural cylinders for the reception. By late December, early January, storms have begun and the basin fills. In early spring, with the basin still wet, birders use the visitor center as a lookout point and stopover on walks through the estuary. As the basin dries out, there is potential for unsanctioned uses. A rider from the stables adjoining the estuary camping out for the night. With midsummer comes the basin's other second major event, an arts festival. Now, cars flank the basin, and visitors access it by long roads and bridges that bridge the basin, long ramps that bridge the basin. Now the cylinders are discrete galleries and performance spaces. Each one is dedicated to an individual performer or work of art. The space beneath the sediment-covered basin is now a cool retreat for ice cream or lunch between performances. When summer rolls to an end, the basin is excavated, starting with the recessed courtyard. Then, the sediment can be dozed over with the edge of the seating to waiting trucks. The rest is cleared with the excavators using the bridges as easy truck access. With this, the cycle is complete. The architecture of the basin engages in the process of sedimentation not only in the way the spaces are experienced, but also in how it is constructed. Visible only in winter at the south end of the basin are walls formed by the accumulation of sediment. Corrugated steel formwork is put in place before the yearly storms. Later, with the basin damp and full, cement typically used to shore up soft ground beneath foundations is injected into the sediment. Each year, a bit more length is added to the walls, creating an archive of the basin. Above, the columns for the bridges also utilize the sediment for construction. Here, the damp sediment acts as formwork. The column shape is augured up and filled with concrete. Once it is cured, the basin is emptied around it. So now let's move on to more specific